Welcome to the Fit Fancy Food March interview feature. Today I am joined by Lynann Escatel, who is a Pilates instructor and Eldoa trainer. We will be talking about the specifics of these exercise methods, the health benefits they provide, and how they compare to other exercise disciplines. Lynann, thanks so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome. I'm excited to talk to you about Pilates and Eldoa today.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to start off with was how did you get your start with Pilates to begin with?
Well, I think Pilates is very intermingled in the dance community as well. So, growing up as a dancer and a professional dancer, I started hearing about it a lot in my early 20s. Then I moved to LA, and that's actually where I first considered becoming a Pilates instructor, but I was still auditioning a lot and I didn't really have the time or focus for the training for it. So then fast forward to living in New York and wasn't in the best physical shape for what I do and what I love. So I knew I needed to get back into some kind of discipline to get back in shape. And I had a good friend that lived in Los Angeles who told me, you should go do Pilates. It's so perfect for dancers. It aligns up so well. And yeah, I walked into True Pilates at the time was called Drago's in New York City. And that was kind of it. I just started out as a client first. And then as I started doing it, I fell in love with it more and more. And it was also a training center. So then that kind of develops me into going into the training.
Oh, perfect. And speaking of training, how long have you been a trainer?
So I've been a Pilates instructor now going on 13 years. I was officially certified October of 2008, but I began my certification late 2006, early 2007-ish. It's an independent certification. Like they have a certain amount of hours they require, but also they're watching you. They will tell you if you should do some more hours, that kind of thing. So I know I did way more hours than like what they require. I also took a little break in the middle of the training. So, it took me a little longer than maybe others, but I value that 18 months of training so much. It really gave me all the foundation for like what I'm doing now. So,
Great.
yeah.
So why did you choose Pilates, the Pilates path, and not yoga or other types of exercise practices?
Yeah. So I had done yoga lots. And at the time, I wasn't really a big meditator. And then some of the yoga classes I went to, you also did the Sanskrit, which again, at that time, didn't really didn't interest me. With Pilates, you're constantly moving. It's finding alignment in motion, whereas yoga, it's finding alignment and holding and breathing through the posture. I'm not a yoga instructor, so pardon if I'm not correctly saying that, but my experience with it and being a mover, and I'm always just kind of hyper. So Pilates just really spoke to me in that kind of way. And
Great.
what's interesting is that in Pilates, there is breath work. And if you are really moving at the pace you're supposed to, then you are sort of in this like Zen meditational kind of place, but it's not holding still, obviously, like with yoga. So, and then it just was very much dancer-esque. I think also my ballet teacher growing up, looking back, I'm confident she took some Pilates somewhere, like maybe in her training as ballet teacher, but didn't call it Pilates. But there were so many similarities that lined up that it just fit me more than the yoga did. I really loved going to yoga, but I'm very hypermobile, extremely hyper flexible. So the Pilates kind of reined that in for me and built the strength for me in that sense. So yeah, it just fit for me in
Well,
that
great.
way.
So we were talking about your certification earlier a little bit. You mentioned on your website that you're a Ramana certified instructor. How does that different from other Pilates certifications?
Well, when I was getting certified, I mean, I didn't really do any research. I knew of Brooke Seiler's program in New York, but also then I was led to Ramana through my friend. And at the time, I mean, there's a lot of controversy, but at the time, Ramana was the program to do. That was it. And since then, there's been a lot of other programs that have come about. Other teachers have branched off and began their own things. So, when I went through it, I was very confident in that program. there's so many amazing programs now. It's really hard when people come to me and ask me like, what would I recommend? It's really hard, honestly. I
Mhm.
just tell people to go with their gut, and also it kind of depends on where you live. I was lucky that I lived in New York, and
Right.
but what was cool about training there is it was an international hub. So we had people from Asia and Europe and South America coming. So the network that I got from training there was probably just as valuable as the work I got
Right.
from it. So I mean, I still use Ramana's name as because it is where my certification is from. But over the years, I have gone and trained in a few other styles of Pilates and with some other teachers that aren't in the Ramana repertoire anymore. But it is where my certification is from. So I do keep that on my website. But really, it's just a lineage, I guess. Really, too. There's some they call like the disciples of Pilates, the people that broke off from Joe and created. So the elders. So Ramana was one of the elders,
Okay,
and
got you.
so
That's
yeah, that's
interesting. Is certain certifications harder than others, or it's just like different styles of Pilates?
yeah. I mean, over the years, if you look, you'll find like I'm considered a classical instructor, and then there's contemporary Pilates.
Kind of like
I
dance
really,
in a way.
yeah, just
Yeah.
like dance. And honestly, I've really tried to stay out of that area of like what's better, what
Right.
works for you is all that really matters. Like I mean, I'll joke I'm a Pilates snob. I will only work on Grotz equipment or maybe Pilates by design. um I'm not really into any of the other manufacturers, no offense to them. It just wasn't what I was trained on. So the
Right.
springs are different, the resistance different, and I don't like teaching something I'm not trained to teach, you
Right.
know
Mhm.
so in that retrospect, I'm a little bit of a snob. If it's not Grotz, then I'm fine. I'll get down on the mat and use an arm weight and I'm good to go, you
Right.
know?
Right.
But again, it just really depends on like where you live and what's available to you. And in the end, if you like the teacher and they are giving you what you want, then to me, it's
Doesn't
just a
matter.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if a person is just starting out with Pilates or trying to figure out if they want to get involved with Pilates, what benefits would you tell them that they could get from Pilates?
Well, I think the main thing is that it's all about posture. And so then in the end, you have a better back. One of the things I loved about Pilates I learned later is that like the hour after you work out is when you're actually burning the calories. It's not so much like during the workout. So
That's
that was like,
interesting.
sweet, I burn
I've
calories
been
afterwards.
I've been doing
So
Pilates for years, but I've never known that.
yeah, it's something to do. Again, I don't know the science behind it. I'd have to find that article again, but that was really cool to me. Um, my majority of my clients are like, sorry, someone is calling. Majority of my clients are like 60 and over. So I love that because they're not coming in for abs and summer body. They're coming in to have a better lifestyle. Like one of my clients, he just wants to be able to bend down and pick up his newspaper every morning. As long as he can do that, he's good to go. And my other client just wants to be able to swing that golf club till the end of time. So um, it's kind of, for that reason, it's pretty amazing. I do have some younger clients. They just want to come in and have a good time, and it's cool because I can throw them around. They don't have injuries. I can make them do all the things.
Right.
But I guess going back to the original question, like what is the benefit is just a better life.
Mhm.
Like Joe Pilates' book is called Return to Life. Return to your body, return to life. And it did that for me too. When I began Pilates, I wasn't the healthiest person. No, both uh food wise and habits.
Right. Right.
Was a smoker, I was a drinker. I don't do either anymore.
Mhm.
And now I'm more plant based, and my life has changed so much. So for me, it's not just about the body, it's like everything. It's really a lifestyle in a
It's
way.
a lifelong exercise practice that you can do throughout, no matter what age you are. So that's the great benefit of it as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, absolutely. So Pilates, from what I know, can be done on a mat or machines can be used, which I've
Yeah.
never tried the machines. They look amazing. But when doing Pilates, is it better to work out on those machines, or or is mat moves just as effective as the machines?
So Matt is the number one. That is the foundation of Pilates. Joe started on the mat in his backyard. My understanding, I mean, I always call them the urban legends because you never know what's true. My understanding is the first thing that Joe ever made was the foot corrector. It's this pedal. I have one in here. I don't know where it is in my room, but it looks like when you go to get your foot size at the shoe, it looks like that, and there's this pedal on it, and you push on it. Joe Pilates was a boxer,
Okay.
so he created Pilates originally for boxing and his own body. He also had like rheumatoid arthritis and asthma. He had all these physical things. So he
Mhm.
was really into like healing his own body. Then he was a boxer, and then he worked with the circus and the acrobats. So then came World War I and the whole rehabilitation with the soldiers, which is the most, I think, the story most people know, which is why people think Pilates is all about rehabilitation. And it can be, but that's not what it was originally founded for.
Right.
So mat is the foundation, which you see my mat sitting on the floor. I'm in my house right now, so I'm sitting on what's called the spine corrector. You can use this. I have another thing called the mini barrel.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have the big, what we call them apparatuses in Pilates. We don't call them machines because they
Okay.
don't do the work for
I used
you.
the wrong
You're doing, no,
terminology.
it's totally fine. Again, here's my snobbiness coming
Right.
out, right? It's an apparatus because there is not anything, it's not a machine doing work for you. It's not like a treadmill running.
Right.
You're making the machine move and work. So we
Okay.
call it an apparatus, but I mean, it is a machine too,
Okay.
right? But there's my snobby classical Pilates coming out in me. Um, but yeah, so I think the way I have always understood is that the equipment came after the mat because then to help you facilitate the things you can't do on the mat. The springs help open up the joints and the spine and the back and help you just get into a better alignment.
Mhm.
There are 7 like main apparatuses. So you got the reformer and the Cadillac, which are probably the 2 most popular known things. The tower units, you'll go to like a gym and see them on the wall, which is partly half of a guillotine and it's half a Cadillac with the mat on the bottom. So
Okay.
then there's an apparatus called the guillotine, which everyone freaks out
Kind of
about. You don't
scary.
see it
Yeah.
very often. It's really unknown. One
Mhm.
of my favorite pieces, though, like for real.
Mhm.
And then we have all these chairs and barrels. Barrels help open up the chest and the back, and the chairs help just to stabilize the pelvis and get stronger. So it really depends on like I have a client right now. She's a little rounded in her upper back, but she's very strong.
Mhm.
So she got a spine corrector so we can start working on opening her chest, and then she also got a wonder chair so we can keep building her strength at the same time. She lives in New York and has an apartment that she could put that stuff into during this crazy
Wow.
world that we're living in right now.
Right.
So that being said, too, like what's so neat about this experience we're living through is that I can take lessons with all these teachers around the world, whether it's on an apparatus or on the mat. So that part's kind of cool.
Mhm.
I get to train with a teacher I love in Holland. I get to train with a teacher I love in Australia. So that's been kind of neat in
Yeah.
this place we got shoved into.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But
Because
I
you get
do
that
miss,
opportunity else,
yeah.
like in
And
the.
right now I'm doing everything online, but I do miss having my clients in front of me and getting to push and pull on them. So slowly but surely we'll get back to there. Um, but
I didn't
yeah,
realize that Pilates started on the mat. For some reason, I always was under the assumption that it was the apparatuses.
yeah. Well,
And
because I think that's when it really started to become popular. Like Joe was German, and he was traveling with the circus when World War I broke out. So he was put into a working camp in Scotland,
okay.
where a lot of the World War I vets, after they got hurt, they would come to the hospital there. And so he started showing them his method, and he started creating. There's a picture of like the hospital bed, and he put a spring on it to help them learn to keep their. And that's how the Cadillac was created. Was from this hospital bed. I don't know when the reformer was designed, um, but I have seen he used to build these things like from stuff in his house. Like I saw the reformer he built, and it had like the hooks from the shower curtain and a piping from underneath the sink he used to, it was really wild until
Talk
he
about
met.
repurposing, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know exactly when I know Grotz, the company, the owner started doing Pilates, and then that's how they created the equipment together. But I know he originally was doing it himself. The magic circles, I love the story about the magic circles. And this is not one of the originals, but the magic circles we use, I was always told inside is a metal ring. And I've always told Joe made his own whiskey. So he cut the barrel in half and took the ring off and was like, what can I do with this?
Right.
So the ring came from the whiskey barrel. The mini barrels come from the whiskey barrel. I love that story.
That is so, I never knew any of this. This is so interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So, but again, like I said, because I think of, and then he came to United States uh, early 40s. Like, again, I don't know how true it is, urban legend, but the stories that Hitler came to him and wanted him to train them, his army, and Joe was like, nope, I'm out. Got on a boat and took off.
Good for
Met
him.
Clara on the boat, who Clara and Joe are the ones that had Pilates in New York. And then his studio was right underneath Balanchine's ballet studio, which is why so many dancers started to do Pilates, because Balanchine started to send all his dancers downstairs to him.
Yeah.
And all the men were off fighting the war. So now the women kind of took it over. And then when the men came back, they went right into the factory. So it went from this male dominated thing to this more feminine thing, for a better word. But it's really cool because right now there's definitely this renewal of it. More and more men athletes are starting to recognize the importance of flexibility, and not just strength. So it's really neat to see the guys kind of coming back to this original work that was for men originally. Like, there's some exercises when I learned and they were like, oh, you never do this one. This is for guys only.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. But then when I learn about the mechanics of the female shoulder joint and the male shoulder joint, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that anymore. That's fine.
Right.
I'll leave that for the guys.
That's so interesting that I learned so much about Pilates. And the funny thing is, like I said earlier, I've been doing it for a long time, but I just never knew all the history behind it. So thank you for sharing all that. And not to change gears here, but another thing that I would love to talk about, considering it is a new exercise practice, is now you're an Aldoa trainer as well. And I've personally never heard of it, and I would love to learn more about it. So give us a little background about this.
Yeah. So I love Pilates, but then Eldoa came into my life. So Eldoa, Eldoa. It's a French acronym, so I am not going to destroy the French language. In English, it translates to LOADS, longitudinal osteoarticular decoaptation. That took me forever.
That's
I was so proud of myself when I could get all those words out.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So mainly, let me break it down as easy as I can. There's a French DO named Guy Voyer. He created this method called Eldoa. Mainly, he was an athlete growing up. He was training for the Olympics in some kind of martial arts, but had a lot of he had back injuries. I don't really remember exactly how they came about. I think there might have been a car accident too. So then he got really obsessed with like healing the back. And he came up with this method called Eldoa, and he started it in the late 70s and then did all this research and documentation in the 80s, because this was all in Marseille, in France, where you have to document these things. It's much different here than in the States, So he did like 10 years of documentations and all the success he had on relieving back pain. But what he also didn't realize at the time was the connection of the spine to the whole nervous system. And he looks at the spine through fascial chain connection. So we're not like, you'll hear people, even in Pilates, we say stack your spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, but really the spine isn't a stack. It's stacked up, but it's connected by these like cables. So the best example for us would be the Verrazano Bridge in New York. You've got those cables, but if you've ever gone across the bridge and it's windy, that bridge swings that bridge scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
But it swings because it needs to have mobility so that it won't break.
Right.
Just like our spine. So if our spine really was a stacked column, it would break the minute we bent. So we have these fascial connections that are like chains, and they go top to bottom. So he studies the spine through your fascial connection, which is brilliant, and made me see the body in like a whole new way. I just remember taking that first workshop being like, I've got to go back and study all my anatomy again, because whoa.
Right.
So first of all, he created it for back pain, but then he realized there's all these other benefits. So you're decoapting the joint you do a posture. It kind of looks like a weird yoga pose, and you hold it for a minute. And during that minute, you're creating more space in whichever vertebrae you're focusing on. There's a posture for every vertebrae of the neck, for the shoulder girdle and the pelvis.
Okay.
Um, so you hold the posture for a minute, and during that minute, you're creating space in the joint, you're rehydrating the disc and the fluid around it, you're rehydrating the fascial tissue. If there's any scar tissue, you're rehydrating and rejuvenating it. You're recreating proprioception, which is like, how do I not know I'm standing up straight?
Right.
Oh, because that's, it's the awareness. So you're building
Mhm.
the awareness and the proprioception, better circulation. And so then in the end, all over happiness. Like for an example, I had a client that came in and she was joking that she snores loud and her husband was like upset because he couldn't sleep that night. And I was like, oh, well, there's an Aldoa for that. She's like, no, there's not. For real, there is.
There is.
So I made her do them. She came back a week later and she was like, my husband thinks you're a miracle worker because he didn't have to leave the room at all this week. Not that she didn't snore, but it wasn't to that degree.
Right.
Right. So she's convinced, she's been doing it, and she tells me all the time. I don't get to see her now because of the way life is right now, but I
Right.
get messages from her all the time that like she's still, when she's remembering to do it, it's good. If she kind of gets off of it, the snoring goes right back, and her husband's like,
Right.
go do your Aldoa.
Right.
So there's amazing benefits to it. Yeah, I mean, I've had clients come in with like some stomach issues. So we do the Aldoas that go to the digestive system. They come back to me and they're like, I don't know what you did, but it
Right.
released.
So if somebody wants to get involved in doing Eldoa, has it made its way to the Obviously it has
Yeah,
because you're a
it's
trainer.
growing.
But
Yeah,
to what degree is it in gyms and whatever gyms are open, of course? But
right.
is there
So
like actual classes that are offered? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, I was doing a class online. I took a little break, but I hopefully will be bringing that back next month, ideally.
Mhm.
I'm also associated with a woman named Ilaria, and she has a program called Feetness, FEET hyphen
Okay.
ness. She teaches Aldoa through that. So I mean, if anybody wants to look her up, feel free because I think she's amazing. And that's actually who I trained my Aldoa through, or my first three levels. And then when you go to do your final level to become a trainer, that's when you meet Guy and you test in front of him, and which was amazing experience. So it is growing. I have heard of some gyms starting to offer it. It's really popular in Canada because he went from France through Canada and down. It's
Okay.
huge in the hockey community. The Capitals, the Stars, they all have Aldoa trainers on their staff. The
Okay.
Kansas City Chiefs have Aldoa trainers on their staffs. The Los Angeles Dodgers have trainers on their staffs. Tiger Woods fixed his back, got back to golfing because of Aldoa.
Wow.
So it's starting to become more mainstream. But as you can hear and see, it kind of started at this prestigious level, well, financially.
Right.
So I'm going to be honest, it's not very cheap.
Mhm.
Um, I'm really trying to figure out a way to make it more affordable for everyone because
Right.
like we all should have a good, healthy life. It really shouldn't matter about like what we can or can't afford to that extent. I got to make a living,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
so yeah, so it was a little bit on this like higher level, and for a long time, the only person you could go to was Guy. So he was traveling around the world giving treatments to people and programs. Now there's more. I think there is now officially. When I certified last year, there was 104 trainers only certified. Now I think there's about 200. So again, and then this year they were going to be getting the program out in Asia and South Asia. But I don't really know with everything that's going on if that happened. There's a lot of it online now. I know there's a guy named Ben. He does Eldoa classes on Instagram. I think on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I'll see him on my page, pop up. It's free
Mhm.
because he just does it on Instagram Live. So yeah, it's growing. It's starting to grow more and more. And I know there's three Aldoa trainers here in Arizona where I am. I've met with them. They're amazing, and um, they actually there's three guys from the Coyotes hockey team that are now going through the training process right now too. So again, yeah, it's starting to grow, and I think it'll become more mainstream as it gets more out there. But like I want to jump in there now while it's still kind of new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super interested in it because as you were saying about the the back and helping the back. I have back issues. My whole family basically does. And I think people in general have back issues. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think is a great, it sounds like a great practice, exercise practice.
Yeah. Well, and I forgot to say, the other big thing I love about it is that it's for everyone.
Mhm.
Even if you're just an IT tech guy that doesn't work out, you're on your computer all day long. Well, you're going to end up being like this eventually at one point in your
Yeah,
life.
scrunched up.
All of us, even when we're sleeping, our spine, I forget the exact, I want to say it's like 12%. Our spine is still in compression, even when we're sleeping.
Yep.
It's never not, unless maybe you're swimming, which is why Joe Pilates believed in swimming, because it was buoyancy. Um, so whether you're yoga, whether you do CrossFit, whether you do HIIT, whether you weight train, doesn't matter. Dancer, Pilates, everybody needs Aldo at the end of the day, which is why I've kind of fallen in love with it so much. It's just that there's so much like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. When I got into Pilates, I was in this little blinder, and Pilates, they're only Pilates. You only do Pilates. That's the only
Right.
thing, you know what I
Right.
mean? And now I'm like, oh, there's other things out there. And the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better the product is going to be. But at the end of the day, we want a good product, and the Eldo will always do that.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
sounds
the other
great.
reason I'm such a big
So
fan.
since we talked about Eldoa and Pilates, what do you have a preference which one you like better, or are they kind of like just two different things that you like them
They're
equally, or and they do different,
yeah,
you know,
they're two
different
different. They're
benefits?
definitely yeah. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
That's
They're
okay.
definitely two different things. So I would not prefer, because with Eldoa, you're creating space for, and you are creating a little bit of strength, but you're not strengthening the whole body. So you still need some kind of strength training. And Guy, who created Eldoa, he has another thing called segmental strengthening. So his philosophy is you get your heart rate up, you do your segmental strengthening, then you do your myofascial stretching was another thing in there, and then you do your Eldoa.
Okay.
So the way I take it is I do my Pilates because there's cardio in the beginning. You got your 100 and you get the blood flow going. Then
Right.
I do my specific exercises for whatever area in Pilates I'm trying to strengthen, or whatever piece of equipment I'm trying to work on. And then I do my Eldoa to decoapt anything that's left over.
Okay.
So they are connected. But that being said, like, you could be a weight trainer and you can do all the weight training, and then you go do your Eldoa,
Got you. So it's like an
So
add-on exercise
yeah.
practice instead of a all-around kind of
Correct. Yeah, you still need some strengthening exercise. You still need to stretch the more larger global muscles, and then you have your small pinpoint areas. So you can't really, I would never tell someone only do this and don't do that. You need the combination for
right.
sure. Yeah.
Well, Lynann, it was great for you to join me today. I learned so much about Pilates, which I thought I knew everything about, but clearly I didn't. And you just, really just taught me a lot. I really appreciate that. And then on
Yeah.
top of it, a new exercise practice, Eldoa, which I would love to try one of these days and maybe see you do it in, over video. It would be great. Maybe to have that
Yeah.
feature it on our website would be wonderful. But I thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thank
I
you
would
for
love to have
asking
you back in
me.
the future.
Yeah, I would love to. I was so excited when you asked me. So, and I love to talk about this stuff. So,
I can tell. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah.